Page 1. By When There Is Blood in the Streets. Baron von Rothschild. The Pursuit of Wealth, Robert Sobel, 1999. The Incredible Story of Money Throughout the Ages. Money: how it has built nations, destroyed dynasties, and shaped every facet of human history. Mesopotamian farmers used it to irrigate their crops, Roman armies to expand Caesar's reach throughout Europe and Africa, Incan rulers to build temples and civilizations, U.S. industrialists to push the frontiers of corporate achievernent. The Pursuit of Wealth tells the fascinating history of how the desire for money has fueled humankind's greatest achievements and produced our most profound tragedies. Readers from all walks of life, from academics in search of a compelling narrative to investors and businesspersons looking for time-tested solutions to age-old dilemmas, will discover how and why money has become inextricably intertwined with every thread in the fabric of human history. Gripping stories and legacies of great fortunes won and lost include: 1. Historical giants like Alexander the Great and Napoleon, and how their battle-honed lessons on wealth and conquest still ring true in today's burgeoning economy. Analyses of 12th-century Venetian financial empires that provide stunning parallels and insights into today's global business and investment arena. 2. How modern rules, regulations, and laws of commerce have developed from 5000 BC through today's technological battleground, and what to look for next. No single idea has had more impact on the development of human history and been less understood than the drive for money. The Pursuit of Wealth is the first comprehensive investigation into this essential topic. Each page will open your eyes to the startling ways and means of property acquisition throughout history and provide you with vital clues that can help you understand today's financial world. The object of this book is to explore and discuss how people have attempted to achieve wealth throughout the ages. Robert Sobel. From the introduction's opening lines, author Robert Sobel, a leading expert on the history of finance and investing, throws down the gauntlet. His benchmark, The Pursuit of Wealth, details the myriad ways that people have chased after money, business, investing, and risk since the dawn of time, and will forever reshape the ways in which you view money and mankind. More than a scholarly tome, however, The Pursuit of Wealth races through history like a fast-paced novel, revealing the dramatic human aspects of wealth accumulation. In this story, powerful individuals shrewdly interact with governments and churches to create the first family dynasties. Inside accounts of Europe's American empires depict how early opportunists, fueled by bold vision and unfettered opportunity, built fortunes that live to this day. 19th-century portraits illustrate how pioneers of capitalism and industry, including J.P. Morgan, John Jacob Astor, Andrew Carnegie, and others, forged the industrial infrastructure that would create a new definition for wealth and define the latter stages of the second millennium. Robert Sobel draws on his lifetime of study and research to categorize human financial endeavor into three natural stages: the age of merchants, explorers, and bankers from the ancient Middle East to 18th century America. This panoramic introductory section covers the early stages of wealth building, when nations and fortunes were built by discovering methods to take products from areas of abundance to places where they were scarce and expensive. The age of farmers. In this age of agriculture, when most people struggled simply to survive day to day, a handful of creative entrepreneurs built huge fortunes. Read how some became titans of agriculture, while others grew rich shipping crops or manufacturing farm equipment. The age of industrialization and information. With the 20th century came big business, and for the first time in history a large middle class with money to spend. The growth of industry is examined, along with the birth of widespread stock market investment and the feeling that true wealth was within everybody's grasp. The Pursuit of Wealth reveals how, While wealth accumulation is an intrinsic part of human nature, its methods have changed dramatically over 5,000 years to meet changing conditions, circumstances, and opportunities. On the one hand, this groundbreaking work of research and analysis stands alone for its ability to analyze and explain how money has affected humankind throughout history. On the other, its lessons and examples will provide invaluable business and investment assistance as we enter the third millennium AD. About the author. Robert Sobel, Ph.D. 1931 to 1999, was a noted financial historian, senior fellow at the Milken Institute, and the Lawrence Stesson Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Business History at Hofstra University. Dr. Sobel authored many noteworthy books, including Dangerous Dreamers, The Financial Innovators from Charles Merrill to Michael Milken and Coolidge, An American Enigma. He wrote a popular column on financial history for Barron's, and his articles and reviews appeared in numerous publications, including the New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, The Washington Post, The Institutional Investor, and others. Introduction. The objective of this book is to explore and discuss how people have attempted to attain wealth through the ages. The material naturally divides itself into 3 sections, each emphasizing a different aspect of the subject, although themes developed in the initial chapter reappear throughout. The first section, which takes the story from the ancient Middle East to the origins of the American and industrial revolutions in the late 18th century, is necessarily panoramic, in that it covers 5 millennia and begins at a time more often the province of archaeologists than historians. During most of this period, wealth was predominantly generated through agriculture, raising crops and domesticated animals, the wealthy being those in control of large tracts of land or sizable herds. Trade, taking products from places where they were in abundance and inexpensive to those where they were scarce and expensive, was present, but in most ancient societies was secondary to agriculture in the creation of wealth. Yet labor specialization, the market workings of supply and demand, profit motivation, money, and the activities associated with banking, such as lending at interest, all were present. While much of the trade in the first 3 millennia of this period was controlled by political or religious institutions, they often were less restrictive in their thinking and methods than our modern-day multinationals. In the beginning of the period, most people were poor peasants more concerned with survival than the accumulation of wealth. Much of this poverty was tied to the nature of pre-modern agriculture. In antiquity in particular, roughly 65 to 90% of the population of any state had to be directly involved in agriculture just to feed themselves, and the minority of political and religious leaders, craftspeople, and merchants. Most of these farmers barely grew enough for their own needs. Today, in the United States, less than 2% of Americans engage directly in agriculture, and this small group feeds not only the American population but a significant number of others as well. Modern agricultural equipment, such as tractors and combines, pesticides, and hybrid seeds, have all made this revolution in agricultural productivity possible. For example, in the distant past, for a wheat farmer a 10-fold return on seed planted was considered exceptional, a 4 to 6-fold return normal. Today, an average return is 40 to 45-fold and often considerably more. Under pre-modern circumstances, then, only the largest landowners and a few others could hope to live above the subsistence level. During the second period, which concluded in the late 19th century, commerce gained rapidly in importance and was upheld by governments and private interests in the form of infrastructure creation, which made trade easier and less expensive to conduct. Industry became increasingly consequential as the century wore on, but the American economy remained based on agriculture well into the 1890s. that classic confrontation between two divergent visions of wealth, Thomas Jefferson advocating an agrarian America on the one hand and Alexander Hamilton working toward an industrialized America on the other, was not as simple and clear-cut as many have imagined. In fact, both men were interested in wealth creation. No less than Hamilton, Jefferson was concerned with the establishment of a large class of wealthy Americans, which he thought possible through agriculture. During the 19th century, his vision seemed the more realistic, as cotton and wheat were the staples of the American economy, and as more and greater fortunes were accumulated by those who devised means of serving the agrarian sector, whether by providing implements to facilitate production, money to purchase the implements, transportation to take the goods to market, or outlets from which they might be purchased. In the third period, which opens with the appearance of large-scale corporate creation and the emergence of a truly industrial America, the debate is embodied in the two representative figures of J.P. Morgan and A.P. Giannini, both major bankers who, not unlike Hamilton and Jefferson, advocated rival images of the American of wealth in the age of securities-based capitalism. Morgan and his fellow investment bankers were concerned with wealth creation in large corporate entities that could produce on a mass scale and send their products throughout the nation and even the world. Giannini was more involved with small business, believing that every employee was a potential capitalist. From there, the narrative proceeds to the development of what at mid-century was called people's capitalism, which turned out to embrace Giannini's ends with Morgan's means. The book concludes with a chapter entitled The Democratization of Wealth, which discusses a period during which the realization of wealth lay within the aspirations of larger segments of the population than ever before. Thus, the book opens with a multitude of poor people and few wealthy individuals, and ends with a large number of wealthy Americans, so 1 million millionaires in a population of some 260 million, and far fewer poor people than is often assumed to exist. True, in the world as a whole, the poor are omnipresent, but this is less the case in the so-called developed countries. Some readers, especially those whose knowledge of history is confined to the last 2 or 3 centuries, might be surprised that searchers for wealth in ancient times were motivated much the same way as modern-day seekers, although their methods differed and their opportunities were more limited. They will encounter slavery, one of the means by which wealth was created and accumulated. Later on, readers will see how planters and slave traders in antebellum America shared similar motivations. The second section, which starts with the Age of Exploration, they will see the honing of the capitalistic instinct and the search for more efficient means of obtaining and amassing wealth. The rise of a business nexus in the young United States that was essentially agricultural and agricultural service in nature will likely be more familiar and easily recognizable. Today's readers will have little problem understanding the reasoning of Eli Whitney, Francis Cabot Lowell, Cyrus McCormick, and DeWitt Clinton, or the railroad, beef, and mining tycoons. They should also consider that if an ancient Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, or Roman, or even a European during the Middle Ages and Renaissance could have been given a glimpse of the way society functioned in the 19th century, what might have struck them most would be the wide variety of methods of obtaining wealth, the speed of the civilization, and the ephemeral nature of affluence. Except for a very small percentage who engaged in long-distance trade, those ancient observers might also be surprised by the distances traveled to obtain wealth. Only a few merchants in the Fertile Crescent or in the Mediterranean cities of the Roman Empire knew of and had contact with counterparts in India and China. By the 16th century, however, the Portuguese, from a small base in Europe, constructed and administered a commercial empire that stretched from the Philippines to Brazil. Certainly by that time, talk of globalization would not surprise merchants and bankers who operated on such a scale. Finally, this book is not intended to be encyclopedic. Some industries, even important ones, have been omitted, along with individuals who became fabulously wealthy. The goal throughout is to illustrate methods of achieving wealth, not to catalogue the tales of how some achieved enormous fortunes. The methods and techniques employed by one tycoon of the Gilded Age suffices, one need not recount them all. Anthropologists and sociologists instruct us that three of the most powerful human motivations are the pursuits of wealth, status, and power. These appear in different mixes at different times in history. All of us know people who desire wealth in order to purchase status and power, and others who use their status to achieve wealth and power, and finally, those with great power who employ it in the acquisition of wealth and status. Also, individuals differ in the degree to which each motivation is a factor in their lives, and the mix changes as they age. The pages that follow trace the pursuit of wealth. But remember that this was not the only goal of the individuals and organizations discussed. Still, wealth more often than not was the spur, although we know of a few secular and clerical figures who rejected wealth, but then they also renounced status and power. The theory that informs this book is that in modern times, in the aggregate, wealth is the prime mover. One need not look to Western society alone to realize how wealth can motivate a people to labor and creation, and how its absence or removal can lead to stagnation. One of the more interesting examples of this is the Kwakiutl, a tribe that inhabited the northern part of Vancouver Island near the mainland of British Columbia at the turn of the 20th century. The eminent anthropologist Franz Boas studied them and produced a report that foretold by a couple of generations what would come to be known as Keynesian economics. Boas' problem wasn't a lack of observational skills or analytical sophistication. Rather, he did not fully comprehend what he had witnessed. The Kwakiutl were famous for the potlatch, in which competing clans met regularly to stage contests in which they demonstrated just how wealthy they were by destroying their most valued possessions, canoes, blankets, and fish grease. Boas noted that large copper plates were also thrown off cliffs, although he commented that the throwers would return later to gather the pieces. The blankets were the most important, for these were the common denominator against which all the other possessions were measured. Boas understood why the Kwakiutl loved the potlatch, citing self-esteem and status as important elements. The Kwakiutl ranked themselves by just how much they destroyed. Boas wrote of this in a report to the Smithsonian Institution in 1895. 4 years later, economist Thorstein Veblen would produce his theory of the leisure class, in which he gave us the term conspicuous consumption, which would seem to help explain the potlatch. What Boas noted but did not comprehend was that the Kwakiutl were quite wealthy, far more than neighboring tribes. The reason was that they worked hard to accumulate those possessions destroyed at the potlatch. There was a strong element of competition present that encouraged productivity and excellence and accumulation. The Kwakiutl developed a system of banking that featured rates that rose sharply according to the length of the loan and the creditworthiness of the borrower. In their search for greater and greater wealth, they even created a system of credit purchasing, with copper plates serving as credit cards. This too encouraged hard and imaginative work. Moreover, the system exhibited many of the aspects of modern reserve banking. Boas noted that in a village of 150 people, there were only 400 blankets, but debts were owed amounting to 75,000 blankets. If the lenders had called in their loans, there would have been what Boas termed a disastrous panic. Distressed by what to them was the wasteful nature of the potlatch, Canadian authorities attacked the practice, suggesting it was deleterious to economic development. Despite some setbacks, the authorities succeeded. The potlatch fell into disfavor. The Kwakiutl turned to commercial fishing to fit into the larger economy. But without the economic spur of the potlatch, initiative declined. So did the Kwakiutl economy. With the best of intentions, The authorities caused grievous harm to the Quakiutl. Whether Boas knew of Bernard de Mandeville's fable of the bees, 1705, is unknown. This work dealt with how a prosperous, hard-working community fell into distress when they abandoned their profligate ways in order to save. The pursuit of wealth is fundamental to Western civilization. It was there at the dawn of recorded history, and probably even before. Page 14.